The Binar captives' necks were spines of bluish pulp before the human platoon finished snapping their serpentine throats. Once considered unrivaled apex predators, hundreds of Binars had been slaughtered after a desperate bid to enslave humanity's newest interstellar colonies. 3 Terran admirals stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber as 12 holograms flickered to life around them. The alien delegates embodied the Milky Way's greatest civilizations, beings with 3 arms, scaly oozing appendages, or faces housing fractal eyes. All radiated anxiety and agitation. 72 hours ago, the Binar armies invaded the Turos system at our galaxy's fringe. 7 worlds were conquered, their surrender negotiated after Binar fleets bombarded each population center from orbit, began humanity's most revered fleet admiral. We've contained them to Omicron 6, the final holdout. Your soldiers are no match for their bestial strength, snarled the Crimson Arachnoid ambassador. None could beat a Binar Rhaegar barehanded, not the Spindels, the Krangor, nor the Zithloks. We were just learning how to crawl while your empires crossed the stars. Yet you now demand we tame the monsters you armed. The Terran admiral shouted back at the assembly of politicians. You think we can overcome your failings? The Spindle representative narrowed her compound eyes. You must infiltrate their homeworld, eliminate Talon, and devastate their command structure. End this aggression, or your worlds will be next. Succeed where we could not, or perish. With a curt nod, the highest-ranking human activated his wrist communicator. Lieutenant Young, you have the orders. You know the cost of failure. Accomplish your mission, or die trying. The Admiral glanced at his fellow officers as he paged Ricky Young, the first human born beyond Earth's orbit. Called the Alliance's most lethal soldier, his raw cunning and tenacity were their last hope against the Binar menace. Now, infiltrating the enemy's heartland, he would face his ultimate trial by fire. A one-man mission to kill the most vicious tyrant in the cosmos. Ricky's communicator chirped as Admiral Vance's hologram materialized, the old man's face grim as he listened to his orders. The lieutenant felt the weight of the entire galaxy's hopes settling on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't allow his own doubts to hinder the mission. Vance had handpicked Ricky's team, each member crucial for this high-stakes infiltration. Ricky exchanged solemn nods with his comrades as they gathered at the hangar where the Council's sleek stealth ship awaited. There was Marcus Blade Johnson, a close-quarters combat expert whose knives never missed. Damien Tech Choi, their resident tech genius, was already tinkering with his hacking gear. Liam Ghost O'Connor methodically calibrated his sniper rifle, known for bullseyes from low orbit. Diego Doc Ramirez triple-checked their medkits, his knowledge of xenobiology making him critical for this op. Beside him hulked Nikolai Tank Petrov, hefting a railgun the size of a small cannon. The brute gave Ricky a grim smile. They were the Terran Alliance's top guns, each worth a platoon of Binar elites. The team boarded in tense silence, strapping into crash couches as the ship knifed through space. Ricky pulled up their mission brief, the data casting shadows across his face. Killing Talon was just the start. They had to shatter the Binar's entire command structure. While Damien pored over Binar hierarchies and troop movements, Liam studied their physiology for weaknesses. Doc frowned at the reports of their regenerative abilities and venomous bite. The more they learned, the clearer the danger became. I'm picking up some interesting signals, Damien said, not glancing up from his console. The Binars communicate via specific pheromones. If I could jam those chemical signals, it might cripple their coordination. Ricky clapped the man's shoulder. Do it! We need every edge out there! As the ship sliced through the void, the kill team checked weapons and drilled close-quarters tactics. Each man was a living weapon, but they had no illusions about the odds. The Binar throne world loomed ahead, a fortified nightmare of gun-bristling moons and orbiting artillery platforms. Infiltrating its surface would make the Normandy landings look like a walk on the beach. But this was no time for doubts. The ship shuddered as it hit atmosphere, beginning its descent into the blood-soaked jungles of Binar. The team prepped for planetfall, their faces, carved from granite, as the ship plunged into the toxic miasma that passed for the Binar atmosphere. The landing was as smooth as silk, the ship touching down in a small clearing surrounded by dense foliage that blocked any view of the sky. Ricky was the first one out, his adaptive camouflage suit already adjusting to match the purple hues of the alien jungle. The rest of the team fanned out behind him, their suits shifting and changing to blend in with the surroundings. They moved through the undergrowth with a silent efficiency, leaves barely rustling as they passed. The jungle was alive with strange sounds and smells, the air thick with a cloying sweetness that stuck to the back of their throats. Ricky held up a fist, signaling for the team to stop. He pointed to a set of tracks in the soft earth, the imprints of clawed feet that were easily twice the size of a human hand. "Binar hunters," he whispered over the comlink. "Liam, take point. Everyone else, stay sharp." They followed the tracks deeper into the jungle, the canopy overhead growing thicker with each step. The air was heavy with the stench of rotting vegetation and the cries of unseen creatures. Suddenly, Liam held up a hand, his voice a low hiss over the comm. "Contact! 3 Binars, armed with plasma rifles, 50 meters ahead." Ricky nodded, his hand already reaching for his own weapon. "Take them out, Liam. Quietly." The sniper unslung his rifle, the weapon unfolding with a soft click. He raised it to his eye, peering through the scope at the unsuspecting Binars. They were massive creatures, their scaly hides a mottled green that blended in with the jungle around them. Each one carried a plasma rifle, the weapons glowing with an eerie blue light. Liam took a deep breath, his finger tightening on the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder, the silenced round streaking through the air to bury itself in the first Binar's eye socket. The creature dropped like a stone, its rifle clattering to the ground. The other 2 Binars whirled around, their eyes searching for the source of the attack. Liam was already moving, his rifle spitting out 2 more rounds in quick succession. The Binars fell, their chests blown open by the high-powered rounds. Ricky and the others moved up, their weapons at the ready. They examined the fallen Binars, noting the strange equipment they carried. There were nets and snares, along with a variety of vicious-looking blades and spears. "These guys were hunters, all right," Ricky said, his eyes narrowing. "But what were they after?" As if in answer, a deafening roar split the air, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The team whirled around, their weapons raised as a massive shape burst from the undergrowth. It was a creature straight out of a nightmare, its body a mass of rippling muscle and armored plates. Its head was a wedge of bone and teeth, its eyes glowing with a baleful red light. "Wraith beast!" Damien yelled, his voice cracking with fear. "They were tracking a fucking wraith beast!" Ricky's mind raced as he stared at the creature, his finger tightening on the trigger of his rifle. The wraith beast was one of the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, a creature that even the Binars feared. But as he watched it charge towards them, an idea began to form in his mind. "We can use this," he said, his voice calm and steady over the comlink. "We can lure it into that Binar outpost, let it do some damage for us." The others looked at him like he was crazy, but Ricky just grinned. "Trust me," he said, his eyes gleaming with a feral light. "This is going to work." They set to work quickly, using the wraith beast's own pheromones to lay a trail of scent that would lead it straight to the outpost. Damien rigged up a series of traps and decoys, using the creature's own instincts against it. As the wraith beast charged through the jungle, following the scent trail, the team moved in behind it, their adaptive camouflage suits rendering them all but invisible. They could hear the sounds of chaos and destruction up ahead, the roars of the wraith beast mingling with the screams of dying Binars. They reached the outpost just as the creature smashed through the outer wall, its massive body crushing Binar soldiers like insects. Ricky and the others charged in behind it, their weapons blazing as they cut down the remaining defenders. Marcus and Nikolai took point, their exoskeletons giving them the strength and speed of a dozen men. They waded into the Binars, their fists and feet striking with bone-crushing force. Ricky and Diego provided support, their advanced weapons cutting down any Binar that tried to flank them. In the midst of the chaos, Damien made his way to the outpost's communication center, his fingers flying over the controls as he hacked into the system. He scanned through the data, his eyes widening as he found what he was looking for. "I've got Talon's location," he yelled over the comm link. "He's holed up in a fortress about 50 clicks from here." Ricky nodded, his face grim as he surveyed the carnage around them. The Wraith Beast lay dead, its body riddled with plasma burns and bullet holes. The outpost was in ruins, the bodies of Binar soldiers scattered across the ground. "Good work, Damien," he said, his voice hard as steel. "Now let's finish this. Talon dies today." As the echoes of the Wraith Beast's rampage faded, Damien hunched over the communication console, his fingers a blur of motion. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he sliced through layer after layer of Binar encryption. Suddenly his eyes widened. "Talon's holed up in a fortress at the heart of their capital," he called out. "Place is locked down tighter than a Zithlock's asshole." Ricky strode over, peering at the schematics. Plasma cannons, pheromone scanners, battalions of elite guards. A frontal assault would be suicide. He turned to his team, jaw set. "We need to infiltrate the city. Damien, find us a Binar transport. Something big enough to hide the squad." Within minutes, they were in the air, the ship's adaptive skin morphing to mimic Binar military craft. Ricky and Marcus stood at the helm, holographic disguises shimmering over their frames. To any observer, they were just another pair of Binar grunts. "Nikolai, Liam, Diego, stay out of sight," Ricky ordered. "Let us handle the checkpoints." As they approached the capital's outer defenses, a guttural voice crackled over the comms. "Identify yourself." Marcus leaned forward, his vocal modulator twisting his words into the Binar tongue. "Patrol ship Zeta 9, returning from hunt in Sector 4. A tense pause, then transmit clearance code. Damien fed the forged code through the system, his fingernails carving crescents into his palms. A hiss of static. A click. The voice returned, laced with suspicion. "Code accepted, but your ship is not on the roster. Prepare for inspection." Ricky's hand tightened on the weapons console, but his voice remained level. "Inspection? On whose authority? We answer directly to Talon, or should I inform him his orders are being questioned?" He let the threat hang in the air, a blade poised over the comms officer's throat. A long, agonizing pause. Then, reluctantly, "Proceed to docking bay 94. Ricky cut the channel, his shoulders sagging with relief, but the real test was still to come. They drifted into the cavernous landing bay, the ship settling onto the pitted deck with a hiss of hydraulics. Ricky and Marcus strode down the ramp, their disguises firmly in place. A phalanx of guards awaited them, plasma rifles held at the ready. The leader stepped forward, his chitin armor glinting in the harsh light. "Your identification, now." Marcus held out a forged ID chip, his hand steady. The guard snatched it, slotting it into his scanner. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the scanner blinked green. "Clear, your cargo?" Ricky gestured to the sealed hold. "Hunting trophies for Talon's collection. For his eyes only, if you value your life." The guard hesitated, then stepped back, motioning for them to pass. They made it 50 paces before the alarms began to wail. Shouts echoed through the bay as guards swarmed towards them, weapons drawn. "It's Crag!" Damien's voice sounded in Ricky's ear. "He made us!" Ricky and Marcus dove for cover as plasma bolts sizzled overhead. The rest of the team burst from the hold, weapons blazing. Nikolai's railgun roared, each shot punching through Binar armor like paper. Liam dropped to one knee, his rifle cracking out a staccato beat of death. But more guards were pouring in with every second, a tide of fangs and blades. They surged forward, heedless of their losses, driven by Crag's bellowed commands. Ricky glimpsed him through the chaos, a titan in blood-red armor, twin swords flashing in his hands. Diego cried out as a plasma bolt seared his shoulder, the smell of charred flesh filling the air. Marcus lunged to cover him, his blades a whirlwind of steel, but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. They were being pushed back, step by blood-soaked step. Ricky fired until his rifle clicked empty, then switched to his sidearm, the shots booming in his ears. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Then over the din, Damien's voice. Pheromone disruptor online. A high-pitched whine filled the air, the pitch rising until it felt like needles in Ricky's skull. The Binars faltered, their coordination crumbling. Some clawed at their heads, others fired wildly, their shots going wide. Ricky saw his chance. Marcus, with me! They charged, Marcus's blades flashing, Ricky's pistol bucking in his grip. They hit the Binar line like a thunderbolt, scattering their foes before them. A path opened, a narrow corridor leading deeper into the city. Towards Talon, towards victory. Ricky plunged into the breach, his team close on his heels. The city swallowed them, a labyrinth of twisting streets and towering spires. In the distance, looming over it all, stood Talon's compound, the lair of the beast. We're close, Ricky said, his voice grim. Stay sharp, stay alive. We're not leaving without Talon's head. Ricky and Marcus burst through the compound's outer defenses, plasma rifles blazing. Automated turrets swiveled to face them, spitting deadly laser fire. The two soldiers dove for cover, hugging the wall as beams of searing light scorched the air above their heads. Damien, we need those turrets offline, now! Ricky barked into his comm. I'm working on it. Damien's voice crackled back, fingers flying over his console. Got it. Most of the defenses are down, but a few are still operational. You'll have to dodge the rest. Ricky and Marcus exchanged a grim nod. They sprinted forward, zigzagging erratically as the remaining turrets tracked their movements. Laser bolts sizzled past inches from their faces. The stench of ozone and scorched metal filled the air. Outside the compound, the rest of the team fought tooth and nail to keep Cragg's warriors at bay. Nikolai's railgun roared. Each shot a thunderclap that sent Binars flying in bloody chunks. Liam's sniper rifle cracked again and again, dropping targets with ruthless precision. Diego laid down covering fire, his plasma carbine spitting blue death. Keep pushing, Nikolai bellowed, his exoskeleton-enhanced strength allowing him to wield his massive weapon like a toy. We need to draw them away from the compound. Inside, Ricky and Marcus navigated a labyrinth of corridors, their adaptive camouflage flickering as they moved from shadow to shadow. Around every corner, Talon's personal guard lay in wait, fangs bared and plasma claws extended. Marcus surged forward, his plasma blade humming to life. The weapon, a marvel of human ingenuity, could slice through Binar chitin like a hot knife through butter. He became a whirlwind of death, the blade shearing through armor, flesh, and bone with equal ease. Ricky covered him, his rifle snapping out precise bursts. Binar after Binar fell, their heads exploding in showers of gore. As they fought their way deeper into the compound, a chilling realization dawned. The Binars they faced were faster, stronger, more resilient than any they had encountered before. Even with Marcus's plasma blade and their advanced weaponry, it was taking more and more effort to bring each one down. They reached a massive blast door, the metal scarred and pitted from countless battles. Ricky slapped a breaching charge onto the surface, priming the detonator. The door vanished in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. Inside, rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each one containing a Binar in various stages of mutation. Some sported extra limbs, bristling with spines and barbs. Others had oversized craniums pulsing with unnatural energy. All of them radiated a palpable aura of wrongness. In the center of the room stood Talon, his form a grotesque patchwork of organic and cybernetic parts. His eyes glowed with a malevolent red light as he regarded the intruders. "You're too late," he rasped, his voice a metallic buzz. "My creations are already perfected. With this biotechnology, the Binars will be unstoppable. Your pathetic alliance will fall, and we will rule the galaxy as is our right." Ricky felt a chill run down his spine. If Talon's experiments were allowed to come to fruition, the Binars would indeed be an unbeatable force. The fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. He raised his rifle, aiming it squarely at Talon's misshapen head. "Not on my watch, you bastard! This ends now!" Talon rose to his full height, a towering mass of flesh and metal. His eyes burned with a feral intensity as he fixed his gaze on the two humans before him. Ricky and Marcus stood their ground, weapons trained on the monstrous Bynarr leader. With a roar that shook the chamber, Talon charged forward, his cybernetic limbs a blur of motion. Ricky and Marcus opened fire, plasma bolts sizzling through the air. But Talon was too fast, too strong. He shrugged off the hits, his armor absorbing the brunt of the damage. Marcus activated his plasma blade and lunged forward, the shimmering blade clashing against Talon's metal claws. The two warriors traded blows, sparks flying as they danced a deadly waltz. Ricky circled around, looking for an opening. That's when he saw it. A strange device embedded in Talon's armor, pulsing with an eerie glow. It seemed to be the source of the Bynarr's unnatural speed and strength. Ricky knew they couldn't beat Talon in a straight fight. They had to take out that device. He caught Marcus's eye and nodded towards the device. Marcus understood immediately. He redoubled his assault, pressing Talon back with a flurry of strikes. The Bynarr snarled, his attention fully focused on the human blade master. Ricky saw his chance. He darted forward, ducking under a sweeping claw, and fired a single precise shot at the device. His plasma bolt struck true, the device sparking and sputtering. Talon staggered, his movements turning jerky and uncoordinated. Marcus didn't hesitate. His blade flashed, slicing through Talon's cybernetic arm at the elbow. The limb fell to the floor with a clang, twitching and sparking. Talon howled in pain and rage, but he was weakening by the second. Ricky and Marcus pressed their advantage, raining blows on the crippled warlord. Talon fought back with the fury of a cornered beast, but he was no match for the two humans. They drove him to his knees, Marcus's blade at his throat, Ricky's rifle aimed at his head. "It's over, Talon," Ricky growled. "Your reign of terror ends now." But even as they secured the defeated Bynarr with heavy restraints, Ricky's calm crackled to life. It was Damien, his voice strained and breathless. "Ricky, we need backup. Crag and his goons have us pinned down. We can't hold them off much longer." Ricky and Marcus exchanged a grim look. Their mission was far from over. Leaving Talon trussed up like a prize turkey, they readied their weapons and raced off to aid their comrades. The battle for the Bynarr homeworld had only just begun. Ricky and Marcus sprinted through the war-ravaged streets of the Bynarr capital, the sounds of intense combat echoing in the distance. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead as they navigated the rubble-strewn alleys, their hearts pounding with adrenaline and urgency. They had to reach their teammates, pinned down by Crag's elite warriors, before it was too late. Suddenly, a piercing cry cut through the din of battle. Ricky skidded to a halt, his eyes scanning the shattered buildings. There, huddled in the ruins of a once grand plaza, a group of Bynarr civilians cowered in fear. They were caught in the crossfire, plasma bolts from Crag's forces streaking dangerously close to their hiding spot. Marcus grabbed Ricky's arm, his voice urgent. "We don't have time, the others need us." But Ricky couldn't ignore the plight of the innocent bystanders. He shook his head, jaw set with resolve. "We can't leave them to die. Cover me." With that, he darted towards the civilians, zigzagging to avoid the deadly plasma fire. Marcus cursed under his breath, but followed close behind, his rifle spitting suppressive fire at the Bynarr warriors. Ricky reached the huddled Bynarrs, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're here to help. Follow me if you want to live." The civilians hesitated for a moment, their compound eyes wide with fear and confusion. But as another plasma bolt exploded nearby, they scrambled to their feet, clutching their young close. Ricky and Marcus formed a human shield around the Bynarrs, their exoskeletons absorbing the brunt of the incoming fire. They moved as one, guiding the civilians through the war-torn streets, always keeping their bodies between the innocents and the danger. As they reached a safe zone, the Bynarrs turned to their human saviors, their faces a mix of gratitude and awe. "You risked your lives for us," one of them said, his voice trembling. "We thought all humans were our enemies." Ricky clasped the Binar's shoulder, his voice firm but compassionate. "Not all of us. We're here to end Talon's reign of terror, not to harm the innocent." News of the humans' heroic actions spread like wildfire through the city, transmitted by the Binar's complex pheromone network. More and more Binars began to see the truth. The humans were not their enemies, but their liberators from Talon's tyrannical rule. Ricky and Marcus pushed on, the weight of their mission driving them forward. As they neared their teammates' position, the sounds of battle grew louder, more intense. They exchanged a grim look, readying their weapons for the fight ahead. But as they rounded the final corner, a sight of pure chaos greeted them. Nikolai stood atop a pile of rubble, a massive plasma cannon clutched in his hands. The weapon, salvaged from a downed Binar fighter, spat out a continuous stream of blue fire, reducing enemy positions to molten slag. Liam and Diego had flanked Craig's forces, their precise shots and deadly traps sowing confusion and terror among the Binar ranks. And there, on every screen and holographic display in the city, Damien's handiwork played out in vivid detail. Images of Talon's defeat, of the humans' bravery and compassion, sapped the will of Craig's warriors. Ricky and Marcus charged into the fray, their arrival a rallying cry for their battered comrades. Together, the team launched a coordinated assault on Craig's position, their movements fluid and precise, honed by countless hours of training and combat. Ricky took point, his plasma rifle barking out a staccato rhythm of death. Marcus guarded his flank, his plasma blade a whirling dervish of destruction. Nikolai provided heavy fire support, each blast from his cannon a miniature supernova. Liam picked off key targets with surgical precision, while Diego laid down suppressive fire and patched up the wounded. They fought as one, a well-oiled machine of lethal efficiency. Craig's warriors, once the terror of the battlefield, crumbled under the onslaught. They fell back, their formation shattering like glass under the hammer blows of the human team. As the team pushed forward, their momentum unbreakable, a chilling laugh echoed across the battlefield. Craig stood atop a pile of rubble, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you've won, humans," he snarled. "You have no idea what you're up against." With a gesture, Craig summoned forth a nightmare made flesh. A dozen Binar warriors emerged from the shadows, their bodies twisted and augmented by the same unholy technology that had empowered Talon. These were the apex predators, genetically enhanced super soldiers bred for one purpose: to annihilate humanity. The apex predators surged forward, their movements a blur of speed and power. They slammed into the human team like a tidal wave, their claws rending armor and flesh with terrifying ease. Ricky barely had time to raise his rifle before a massive fist sent him flying, his body smashing through a wall. Marcus and Nikolai met the onslaught head-on, their plasma blades flashing in the dim light. They danced a deadly waltz with the apex predators, their exoskeletons straining to match the sheer strength of their foes. Liam's sniper rifle barked again and again, each shot finding its mark, but the apex predators shrugged off the wounds, their bodies knitting back together with unnatural speed. Ricky dragged himself to his feet, his head ringing from the blow. He saw Diego dragging a wounded Damien to cover, the medic's face grim as he applied pressure to a gaping wound in the hacker's side. They were losing this fight, and losing it badly. But Ricky refused to give up. He'd come too far, sacrificed too much to let it end here. His mind raced, seeking a weakness, a chink in the apex predator's armor. And then it hit him. The neural implants. The very technology that made them so powerful could also be their undoing. "Damien!" Ricky shouted over the din of battle. "The implants! Can you hack them?" Damien, his face pale from blood loss, managed a weak grin. "I thought you'd never ask." As the rest of the team bought them precious seconds with their lives, Damien hunched over his console, his fingers flying over the keys. Ricky and Marcus stood guard over him, their weapons spitting death at any apex predator that came too close. Suddenly, Damien let out a whoop of triumph. "Got it," he crowed. Uploading the virus now. The effect was immediate and devastating. The apex predators stumbled, their movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. Some clawed at their heads, howling in agony as the virus tore through their neural pathways. Others simply collapsed, their bodies twitching and convulsing on the ground. Seizing the moment, the human team went on the offensive. Marcus and Nikolai waded into the disoriented apex predators, their blades flashing in a whirlwind of destruction. Liam picked off stragglers with precise headshots, while Diego darted from fallen foe to fallen foe, ensuring none would rise again. Ricky, meanwhile, charged straight for Crag. The Binar commander roared in fury, his plasma sword igniting with a hiss. They clashed in a storm of sparks and sizzling energy, their blades moving faster than the eye could follow. Crag was strong, his augmented body fueled by rage and hate, but Ricky was faster, his human reflexes and ingenuity giving him the edge. He ducked and wove, his plasma blade finding the gaps in Crag's armor, the weak points in his defenses. With a final, desperate lunge, Ricky drove his blade through Crag's chest, the plasma searing through flesh and bone. The Binar commander staggered back, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. He toppled to the ground, his body dissolving into ash as the plasma consumed him from within. Ricky stood over the remains of his foe, his chest heaving with exertion. Around him, the last of the apex predators fell, cut down by the skill and courage of his team. The battle was won, but at a terrible cost. The city lay in ruins, the streets choked with the bodies of the fallen. But as Ricky looked out over the devastation, he saw something else. Hope. The Binar civilians, the ones they had saved, were emerging from their hiding places, their eyes alight with a new future. A future free from Talon's tyranny, free from the cycle of violence and oppression. Ricky turned to his team, his brothers in arms. They were battered and bloodied but unbroken. They had done the impossible, had struck a blow for freedom that would echo throughout the galaxy. And as they stood there, united in their triumph, Ricky knew that this was only the beginning. There were other worlds out there, other tyrants to topple, and they would be there to meet them, to fight for the weak and the innocent, to be the shield that guarded the realms of men. For they were the Terran Alliance's finest, the tip of the spear in the eternal battle against darkness. They were the heroes of humanity, and their legend was just beginning. The smoke of the battle drifted lazily into the violet sky as the team patched up their wounds and regrouped. Damien, despite his injuries, was already poring over the data he'd ripped from the apex predator's implants, searching for clues to the origin of the unholy biotechnology. "This is advanced stuff, way beyond anything I've seen before," he muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's almost like, no, that's impossible." Ricky looked over, his interest piqued. "What's impossible?" Damien shook his head, as if trying to dislodge an unpleasant thought. "This code, the genetic sequences, they're not entirely Binar. There are sections that look almost human." A chill ran down Ricky's spine. The implications were staggering. Had someone from Earth been collaborating with Talon? Or was this the work of some rogue faction within the Alliance, pursuing forbidden science in the shadows? He pushed the thought aside. Those were questions for another day. Right now, they had a more pressing concern, getting off this rock and back to friendly space. Their ship had taken a beating during the insertion, and they'd need to make repairs before they could even think about attempting a jump. "Nikolai, Liam, see what you can salvage from the Binar vehicles," Ricky ordered, his mind already racing ahead. "We need parts, fuel, anything that can get our bird flying again. Marcus, help Damien go through that data, see if there's anything we can use. Diego, you're with me. We need to tend to the wounded and secure the area." The team split up, each member falling into their assigned role with the ease of long practice. They had been through hell together, had forged bonds stronger than steel in the crucible of combat. They were more than a unit, more than friends. They were family. As Ricky and Diego moved among the Binar civilians, offering what aid and comfort they could, Ricky couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. They had won a great victory here today, had struck a blow against tyranny that would be felt across the galaxy. But he knew deep in his gut that their struggle was far from over. There were forces out there, dark and ancient, that would stop at nothing to snuff out the flame of human freedom. They would need to be ready, to be vigilant, to fight with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed. But for now, in this moment, they could rest. They could heal and plan and prepare for the battles to come. For they were the Terran Alliance's sword and shield, the guardians of humanity's future. And they would never, ever stop fighting. Ricky and Crag circled each other, plasma blades humming, the battlefield around them fading away until only the two combatants remained. Crag sneered, his eyes glinting with malevolent glee. "You think you've won, human?" he snarled. "You have no idea the power Talon has granted me." With a roar, Crag lunged forward, his movements a blur of speed and ferocity, but Ricky met him head-on, his own blade flashing in a dizzying pattern of parries and counter-strikes. They danced across the rubble-strewn ground, their blades clashing in showers of sparks. Crag's raw strength was staggering, each blow sending shockwaves up Ricky's arms. But Ricky's skill and experience kept him in the fight, allowing him to match the Binar commander move for move. Around them, the battle raged on, Binar and human alike pausing to watch the titanic clash unfolding before them. Marcus and Nikolai, still locked in combat with the remaining apex predators, spared glances at their leader, their faces etched with a mix of awe and concern. Ricky's focus narrowed to a razor's edge, his senses heightened to an almost preternatural degree. He could see the twitch of Crag's muscles, the slight shift in his balance that betrayed his next move. And then he saw it, the pattern in Crag's attacks, the subtle tell that he had been waiting for. Crag's eyes would flick to the left just before he launched a sweeping overhead strike, a move that had nearly taken Ricky's head off earlier in the fight. Ricky waited, letting Crag press the attack, biding his time until the moment was right. And then, as Crag's eyes flicked left once more, Ricky made his move. He feinted to the left, drawing Crag's blade high. The Binar commander, committed to his strike, overextended himself, leaving his right side exposed for the briefest of moments. But a moment was all Ricky needed. His plasma blade flashed, a searing arc of blue-white energy that sliced clean through Crag's enhanced arm at the elbow. The severed limb fell to the ground, still clutching its weapon, as Crag howled in agony and rage. The Binar commander staggered back, his remaining hand clutching at the smoking stump of his arm. His eyes blazed with hatred as he fixed Ricky with a murderous glare. "I'll kill you," he roared, charging forward in a desperate final assault. But Ricky was ready. He sidestepped the clumsy attack, his blade coming up in a swift, precise thrust that pierced Crag's chest, burning through armor, flesh, and bone to pierce the Binar's black heart. Crag's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening in a silent scream. He tottered for a moment, then fell, his massive body crashing to the ground like a felled tree. Across the battlefield, the apex predators, their neural implants still scrambled by Damien's hacking, faltered. Some clutched at their heads, others simply stood, dazed and disoriented. Seizing the moment, the human team pressed their advantage. Nikolai and Marcus surged forward, their weapons blazing as they cut down the confused and demoralized super soldiers. Liam's rifle cracked again and again, each shot finding its mark with unerring precision. Diego moved among the fallen, confirming kills and treating the team's wounds with quick, efficient movements. In a matter of moments, it was over. The apex predators lay dead or dying, their blood mingling with the dust and rubble of the shattered city. The human team, battered but unbroken, gathered around their leader, their faces grim but triumphant. Ricky looked down at Crag's corpse, his eyes hard. The Binar commander had been a formidable foe, a warrior enhanced by the same twisted science that had created Talon himself. But in the end, he had fallen, like all those who stood against the cause of freedom. The lieutenant turned to his team, his voice rough with exhaustion but filled with pride. "Good work, everyone, but this isn't over yet. We need to gather any intelligence we can find, figure out the full extent of Talon's operations, and then we need to get the hell off this rock and report back to the Council. The others nodded, their expressions determined. They knew the stakes, knew that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, but they also knew that they were the best of the best, the only ones who could stand against the darkness and emerge victorious. As they began to search the fallen Binars, stripping them of weapons and equipment that might prove useful, Ricky allowed himself a moment of reflection. They had won a great victory here today, had struck a blow against tyranny that would echo across the stars. But he knew deep in his gut that their struggle was far from over. There would be other battles, other challenges to face. But for now, in this moment, they could savor their triumph, could take pride in the knowledge that they had made a difference, no matter how small. For they were the Terran Alliance's sword and shield, the guardians of humanity's future, and they would never, ever stop fighting. Damien hunched over the fallen body of an apex predator, his fingers flying over the soldier's neural implant. The device was a marvel of Binar engineering, a web of circuitry and bioorganic components that interfaced directly with the wearer's brain. "I think I can access the data stored in this thing," Damien muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Might give us some insight into how these bastards were created." Ricky nodded, watching as his friend worked. The rest of the team fanned out across the battlefield, securing the perimeter and tending to their own injuries. Marcus, his arm hanging awkwardly at his side, gritted his teeth as Diego probed the bloody gash that ran from shoulder to elbow. "Hold still," the medic admonished, his hands steady as he cleaned and sealed the wound with quick, precise movements. "You're lucky. A few inches to the left and you'd be picking up your arm off the ground." Marcus grunted, his face pale but his eyes still sharp. "Wouldn't be the first time. Just patch me up, Doc. We've got work to do." Nikolai, meanwhile, was already salvaging weapons and equipment from the fallen Binars, his massive frame making light work of the heavy lifting. Liam moved among the bodies, his rifle at the ready, ensuring that none of the enemy soldiers were playing possum. Ricky turned back to Damien, watching as the hacker's face lit up with sudden excitement. "I've got something!" he exclaimed, his voice tight with tension. "Looks like a set of coordinates, heavily encrypted. Give me a minute to crack the code." The others gathered around, their faces tense with anticipation. If Damien was right, those coordinates could lead them to the heart of Talon's operation, to the source of the biotechnology that had created the apex predators and transformed Crag into a living weapon. Damien worked feverishly, his fingers a blur over the implant's interface. Minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. And then, with a final triumphant keystroke, he sat back, a grin splitting his face. "Got it," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "The coordinates lead to a remote system on the edge of Binar space. Looks like some kind of research facility, heavily fortified and well hidden." Ricky felt a surge of adrenaline, his heartbeat quickening at the thought of what they might find there. The answers they sought, the key to ending Talon's reign of terror once and for all. He turned to his team, his eyes blazing with determination. "All right, people. We've got our target. Let's get back to the ship and plot a course. We're going to hit that facility hard and fast before they have a chance to destroy any evidence." The others nodded, their faces set with grim resolve. They knew the risks, knew that they were heading into the heart of enemy territory, but they also knew that they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy depended on them, on their skill and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. As they made their way back to the extraction point, picking their way through the rubble and debris of the shattered city, Ricky felt a sense of purpose settling over him like a mantle. They had struck a mighty blow against Talon and his minions, had shown the galaxy that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But their true test still lay ahead, in the depths of that hidden research facility. And Ricky knew, with a certainty that burned like a flame in his heart, that they would face that test with the same unwavering resolve that had brought them this far. For they were the best of the best, the brightest stars in humanity's firmament, and they would not rest until the galaxy was free from the shadow of tyranny, no matter the cost. As Ricky and his team picked through the ruins of Talon's compound, Damien's voice crackled over the comm link, his words laced with urgency. Guys, I found something in the data we recovered from the apex predator's neural implants. Talon wasn't working alone. He had a partner, a Binar scientist named Dr. Zeklor. Ricky's brow furrowed as he listened to Damien's report. Dr. Zeklor, it seemed, was the mastermind behind the biotechnology that had created the apex predators. He had used genetic material from a variety of alien species, including humans, to enhance the Binar's already formidable abilities. The implications were chilling. If Dr. Zeklor's research was allowed to continue, he could create an army of super soldiers that could threaten the entire galaxy. Ricky knew they had to act fast. "All right, team, listen up," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "We need to split up. Nikolai, Damien, Diego, you stay here and secure the capital. Make sure no apex predators slip through the cracks. Marcus, Liam, you're with me. We're going after Dr. Zeklor." The team nodded, their faces grim with determination. They knew the stakes, knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. Ricky and his sub-team followed the trail of clues left behind by Dr. Zeklor, piecing together the scientist's movements from scraps of data and intercepted communications. The trail led them deep into the Binar wilderness, to a remote region known for its treacherous terrain and deadly predators. As they approached the coordinates Damien had provided, a sense of unease settled over the group. The jungle was too quiet, the air too still. Ricky's instincts screamed a warning, and he signaled for the others to take cover. Seconds later, all hell broke loose. A group of apex predators, their bodies bristling with cybernetic enhancements, burst from the undergrowth, their plasma rifles spitting deadly fire. Ricky and his team dove for cover, their own weapons already in hand. Marcus was the first to engage, his plasma blade flashing as he closed with the nearest predator. The two warriors clashed in a blur of motion, their enhanced strength and speed making their duel a sight to behold. Marcus ducked and wove, his blade seeking the weak points in the predator's armor, while the Binar fought back with savage ferocity. Liam, perched in a nearby tree, provided covering fire with his sniper rifle. His shots were precise and deadly, each one finding its mark in the predator's enhanced flesh. One by one, the Binars fell, their lifeless bodies crumpling to the jungle floor. Ricky, armed with a prototype plasma cannon, took aim at the reinforced doors of the research facility that loomed ahead. The weapon hummed with barely contained power, its barrel glowing a brilliant blue. Ricky squeezed the trigger, and a searing bolt of plasma leapt forth, blasting through the doors in a shower of molten metal. As the smoke cleared, Ricky and his team charged forward, their weapons at the ready. They burst into the facility, prepared for anything. But what they found inside was beyond their wildest imaginings. The complex was a maze of laboratories and holding cells, each one filled with the results of Dr. Zeklor's twisted experiments. Creatures that defied description, their bodies warped and twisted by the scientist's genetic tinkering, writhed and howled in their cages. The air was thick with the stench of chemicals and the coppery tang of blood. And there, at the heart of it all, stood Dr. Zeklor himself. The Binar scientist was a gaunt figure, his body almost lost beneath the tangle of cybernetic implants that snaked across his flesh. His eyes gleamed with a fevered light as he beheld the intruders. "Welcome, humans," he said, his voice a rasping whisper. "You're just in time to witness the birth of a new era, an era in which the Binars will take their rightful place as the rulers of the galaxy." Ricky raised his plasma cannon, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Not on my watch, Doctor. Your reign of terror ends here." Dr. Zeklor laughed, a sound like the grating of metal on bone. "You have no idea what you're up against, human. My creations are the future, and you're nothing but a relic of the past." With a gesture, Dr. Zeklor summoned forth a new wave of apex predators, their bodies even more heavily augmented than those the team had faced outside. They charged forward, their roars shaking the very foundations of the complex. Ricky and his team met them head-on, their weapons blazing, their hearts filled with the knowledge that they were the galaxy's last line of defense. They would fight to their last breath, would give everything they had to stop Dr. Zeklor and his abominations. For they were the Terran Alliance's finest, the shield that guarded the realms of men, and they would not fail, no matter the cost. As Ricky, Marcus, and Liam ventured deeper into the research facility, the true horror of Dr. Zeklor's experiments unfolded before their eyes. Rows upon rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each one containing a different alien species in various stages of genetic manipulation. Binars, Krellians, and even humans floated in eerie, glowing liquid, their bodies twisted and warped by the mad scientists' machinations. The team pressed on, their weapons at the ready, until they reached the central laboratory. There, amidst a maze of bubbling vats and humming machinery, stood Dr. Zeklor himself. The Binar scientist was a gaunt figure, his body almost entirely replaced by cybernetic enhancements. His eyes glowed with a feverish intensity as he beheld the intruders. "Ah, the famous Ricky Young," Dr. Zeklor rasped, his voice a metallic whisper. "I've been expecting you." Ricky stepped forward, his plasma rifle trained on the scientist's chest. "Dr. Zeklor, your experiments end here. This is madness, tampering with life like this." The Binar laughed, a sound like grating metal. "Madness? No, this is progress. I am creating the ultimate life form, a being that combines the strengths of all species while eliminating their weaknesses." He gestured to the stasis pods, his voice rising with excitement. The apex predators were merely a stepping stone, a proof of concept. With the knowledge I have gained, I will create an army of perfect creatures, beings that will sweep across the galaxy like a plague, consuming all in their path. Ricky shook his head, horror and disgust etched on his face. "This isn't progress, it's an abomination. Every living thing has a right to its own existence, its own identity. What you're doing here is a perversion of nature." Dr. Zeklor's eyes narrowed, his cybernetic implants whirring with barely contained rage. "I will not be lectured by a primitive ape like you. You cannot comprehend the magnitude of my work, the glory of my vision." With a gesture, the mad scientist activated a control panel, and a stasis pod at the far end of the laboratory hissed open. A monstrous creature emerged, its body a nightmarish fusion of Binar, Krellian, and human DNA. It was a hulking brute, its muscles rippling with unnatural strength, its skin a patchwork of scales and leathery hide. "Behold the future of the galaxy," Dr. Zeklor crowed, his voice rising to a manic pitch. "My greatest creation, the first of many." The creature roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the laboratory. It charged forward, its claws extended, its maw dripping with caustic saliva. Marcus and Liam opened fire, their weapons spitting plasma bolts at the advancing monstrosity. But the creature was too fast, too powerful. It shrugged off the plasma bolts, its Krellian-derived regenerative abilities knitting its wounds back together almost as quickly as they were inflicted. It barreled into Marcus, sending the human warrior flying across the room to crash into a bank of machinery. Liam tried to flank the creature, his plasma blade humming to life, but the monster was too quick. It spun, its tail lashing out to catch Liam in the chest, hurling him back against the wall with bone-crushing force. Ricky, seeing his comrades fall, knew that he had to act fast. He darted to a nearby console, his fingers flying over the keys as he tried to hack into Dr. Zeklor's research files. The mad scientist, seeing what Ricky was attempting, let out a howl of rage and lunged forward, his cybernetic claws extended. But Ricky was faster. He dodged the scientist's attack, his hand slamming down on the final key. The console beeped and a flood of data scrolled across the screen. Ricky's eyes widened as he scanned the information, his mind racing. There, buried in the complex web of genetic sequences and biochemical formulae, was a critical flaw in the creature's design, a weakness that could be exploited, a genetic kill switch that would neutralize the monster's abilities. Ricky's hand flew to his belt, grabbing a syringe filled with a potent neurotoxin. He had one chance, one shot to end this nightmare. The creature, sensing the threat, whirled to face him, its jaws opening in a roar of challenge. Ricky's fingers flew over the laboratory's advanced equipment, his mind racing as he synthesized the serum that would target the hybrid creature's genetic weakness. His years of experience in the military's bioweapons division guided his actions, allowing him to work with speed and precision. Marcus and Liam fought the creature with a combination of skill and desperation, their plasma blades flashing as they danced around its deadly claws and razor-sharp spines. The creature roared in fury, its monstrous visage twisted with rage as it sought to tear the humans apart. "Hurry, Ricky!" Marcus shouted, ducking under a sweeping claw. "We can't hold it off much longer." Ricky loaded the serum into a specialized dart gun, the weapon humming with power as he took aim at the creature. The beast lunged at Liam, its jaws snapping mere inches from his face. Ricky tracked its movements, waiting for the perfect moment. A plasma blast from Dr. Zeklor's cybernetic arm sizzled past Ricky's head, the mad scientist cackling with glee. "You're too late, human! My creation is unstoppable!" Ricky ignored the taunt, his focus unwavering. The creature reared back, preparing to strike at Marcus. Ricky squeezed the trigger, the dart flying true. It struck the beast in its neck, the serum pumping directly into its bloodstream. The effect was immediate. The creature stumbled, its movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. Marcus and Liam pressed their advantage, their plasma blades slicing through the weakened flesh with renewed vigor. Ricky turned his attention to Dr. Zeklor, leveling his prototype plasma cannon at the rogue scientist. "It's over, Doctor. Stand down." Dr. Zeklor's eyes darted to a hidden panel on the wall, his hand moving towards it. Ricky fired a warning shot, the plasma blast searing the air inches from the scientist's face. "Don't even think about it," Ricky growled. But Dr. Zeklor was beyond reason. With a manic laugh, he slammed his hand on the panel, activating a hidden teleportation device. Ricky had anticipated this move, however, and had sabotaged the device during his earlier hacking attempt. The teleporter sparked and fizzled, a burst of unstable energy engulfing Dr. Zeklor. The scientist screamed, his body disintegrating as the device overloaded and exploded. Ricky shielded his eyes from the blinding light, the stench of ozone filling the air. As the smoke cleared, Ricky saw that the hybrid creature had fallen, its lifeless body sprawled on the laboratory floor. Marcus and Liam stood over it, their armor scorched and battered, but their faces filled with grim satisfaction. Ricky activated his comlink, contacting Nikolai, Damien, and Diego. "Dr. Zeklor and his creation have been neutralized. What's your status?" "The capital is secure," Nikolai reported, his voice gruff but filled with pride. "We're coordinating with the Galactic Council to provide aid and support to the Binar people." Ricky nodded, relief washing over him. "Good work, team. We'll focus on freeing the captive test subjects and securing the research facility." He turned to Marcus and Liam, his eyes scanning the rows of stasis pods that lined the walls. "Let's get these people out of here and make sure this kind of experimentation never happens again." The two warriors nodded, their faces set with determination as they moved to the nearest pod, ready to begin the long process of liberation and healing. As Ricky, Marcus, and Liam began the arduous process of freeing Dr. Zeklor's test subjects from their stasis pods, a sudden tremor rocked the facility. The air crackled with an ominous energy as a hidden fail-safe system, triggered by the rogue scientist's demise, whirred to life. From the depths of the complex, a new wave of apex predators emerged, their eyes glinting with a cold, ruthless intelligence. These genetically enhanced Binars, even more powerful and deadly than their predecessors, surged forward with a singular purpose: to reclaim Dr. Zeklor's research and continue his twisted work. Leading the charge was Zorak, a massive, heavily augmented Binar, whose very presence radiated an aura of menace. His tactical implants glowed with an eerie red light, granting him enhanced senses and a preternatural ability to anticipate his opponent's moves. Ricky, Marcus, and Liam immediately sprang into action, their weapons at the ready as they met the apex predators head-on. The battle that ensued was a brutal display of skill and strength, with both sides pushing themselves to their limits. Zorak singled out Ricky, engaging the human commander in a fierce duel. The Binar's augmented physique and razor-sharp claws clashed against Ricky's lightning-fast reflexes and tactical brilliance, neither combatant giving an inch. Marcus and Liam fought back-to-back, their plasma blades humming as they carved through the ranks of the apex predators. The air sizzled with the stench of burnt flesh and ozone as the two warriors held the line, buying precious time for the test subjects to be evacuated. As the battle raged on, Damien's voice crackled over the comm link, his tone urgent and strained. "Ricky, I've discovered something crucial. These apex predators, they're not acting on their own. They're being controlled by a central AI housed in a secure vault deep within the facility. If you can reach it and destroy it, it should render them inert." Ricky, locked in a deadly dance with Zorak, gritted his teeth as he processed this new information. The Binar's claws raked across his armor, leaving glowing scars in their wake. With a burst of strength, Ricky shoved Zorak back, buying himself a moment to formulate a plan. "Marcus, Liam," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos that surrounded them. "I'll draw Zorak and the main force away from the vault. You two need to find a way inside and destroy that AI. It's our only chance." The two warriors nodded, their faces grim with determination. They knew the risks, but they also knew that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. With a final salute to their commander, Marcus and Liam broke away from the main battle, slipping into the shadows of the facility as they sought out the hidden vault. Ricky, meanwhile, turned to face Zorak once more, a grim smile playing across his lips. "All right, you bastard," he growled, his plasma cannon humming with barely contained energy. "Let's dance." With a roar of challenge, Ricky charged forward, drawing Zorak and the bulk of the apex predators away from the vault. His heart pounded in his ears as he weaved and dodged, his weapon spitting bursts of searing plasma at his relentless foes. It was a risky gambit, a desperate ploy born of necessity and trust. But as Ricky lost himself in the fury of battle, he knew that he could count on his team to see the mission through. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to fail now. And so, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Ricky, Marcus, and Liam fought on, their courage and determination a shining beacon in the darkness of Dr. Zeklor's twisted legacy. Ricky's heart pounded as he faced off against Zorak, the massive Binar's eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. The two warriors circled each other, their weapons humming with barely contained energy. Ricky knew he had to buy time for Marcus and Liam to reach the AI vault, and he was prepared to use every trick in his arsenal to keep Zorak focused on him. With a sudden burst of speed, Ricky lunged forward, his plasma blade clashing against Zorak's own weapon. Sparks flew as the two warriors exchanged blows, their movements a blur of precision and power. Ricky ducked and weaved, using his agility to avoid Zorak's crushing strikes, while landing his own hits whenever an opening presented itself. As the duel intensified, Ricky began to lead Zorak through the maze of corridors and laboratories that made up the facility. He used his knowledge of the complex's layout to his advantage, activating containment fields and sealing doors to trap the pursuing apex predators. Zorak roared in frustration as his minions were cut off from the chase, their enraged howls echoing through the halls. Ricky, seizing the opportunity, overloaded a power conduit, causing it to explode in a shower of sparks and shrapnel. The blast scattered the remaining apex predators, buying Ricky precious seconds to put some distance between himself and Zorak. Meanwhile, Marcus and Liam fought their way through the facility, their weapons flashing as they engaged the apex predators that stood between them and the AI vault. Marcus, armed with twin plasma blades, was a whirlwind of destruction, his enhanced strength and reflexes allowing him to take on multiple foes at once. He sliced through armor and flesh alike, his blades leaving glowing trails of molten metal in their wake. Liam, perched on a walkway above the fray, provided covering fire with his prototype railgun. The weapon's high-velocity rounds punched through even the thickest Binar armor, dropping the apex predators with pinpoint accuracy. Together, the two warriors carved a path of destruction through the enemy ranks, their determination fueled by the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy rested on their success. As they neared the AI vault, Marcus and Liam encountered a final line of defense, a squad of elite apex predators, their armor bristling with advanced weaponry. Energy shields shimmered around the vault entrance, while automated turrets tracked the humans' every move. Marcus and Liam exchanged a brief nod, their years of training and experience allowing them to communicate without words. Marcus charged forward, drawing the fire of the turrets and the elite apex predators. His armor absorbed the brunt of the damage, the advanced materials deflecting the worst of the plasma bolts. Liam, taking advantage of the distraction, lined up a series of precise shots with his railgun. The high-velocity rounds pierced the energy shields, overloading them in a cascade of sparks and smoke. With the defenses breached, Marcus surged forward, his plasma blades flashing as he engaged the elite apex predators in close combat. The two humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their weapons and armor pushed to the limit as they battled the genetically enhanced Binars. Marcus's blades clashed against the apex predator's own melee weapons, while Liam's railgun shots took down any foe that threatened to flank them. Finally, with a last devastating strike, Marcus felled the final apex predator, the creature's lifeless body crumpling to the floor. Liam, wasting no time, rushed to the vault door and began to hack the locking mechanism, his fingers flying over the control panel. With a hiss of hydraulics, the vault door slid open, revealing the pulsing, glowing mass of the AI core. Marcus and Liam stepped inside, their eyes widening at the sight of the advanced technology that controlled the apex predators. They knew they had little time. Ricky could only keep Xorak distracted for so long, and reinforcements were sure to arrive at any moment. With grim determination, they set to work, planting explosive charges at key points around the AI core. As they finished setting the detonator, Marcus and Liam shared a look of understanding. They had done all they could. Now, it was up to fate and the strength of their bond as a team. With a final nod, they turned and sprinted for the exit, the timer on the detonator ticking down with each passing second. The explosive charges detonated with a thunderous boom that rocked the facility to its core. A blinding flash of light erupted from the AI vault as the core was vaporized, the shockwave rippling outward in a wave of destruction. Marcus and Liam, already fighting their way out of the vault, were knocked off their feet by the blast, their armor absorbing the brunt of the impact. Around them, the apex predators, their neural link to the AI severed, collapsed like marionettes with cut strings. They fell to the ground, twitching and writhing, their enhanced bodies suddenly bereft of the guiding intelligence that had controlled them. Ricky, locked in a desperate battle with Xorak, felt the shockwave wash over him. The floor bucked beneath his feet, nearly throwing him off balance, but he managed to keep his footing. A savage grin split his face as he realized what had happened. His team had done it. The AI was destroyed. Xorak, realizing the same thing, let out a roar of rage and redoubled his attacks. His plasma blades slashed through the air, a blur of crackling energy that Ricky barely managed to parry. The Binar's movements were faster, more erratic, fueled by a burning anger at seeing his forces neutralized. But Ricky refused to be intimidated. He met Xorak's fury with a cool, focused determination, his own plasma blade flashing in a series of precise strikes and counters. He gave ground slowly, luring Xorak deeper into the facility towards a narrow maintenance passageway he had spotted earlier. As they entered the passageway, Ricky's strategy became clear. The confined space worked against Xorak's size and strength, limiting his ability to maneuver and bring his full power to bear. His plasma blade scraped against the walls, sending showers of sparks cascading to the floor. Ricky, on the other hand, used his smaller size and agility to his advantage. He ducked and wove, darting in to land quick, precise blows before dancing back out of range. His plasma blade flashed, scoring hits on Xorak's armor, leaving glowing scars in its wake. As the duel wore on, Kozorak began to tire, his movements becoming sluggish, his attacks more predictable. Ricky, sensing his moment, feinted left, drawing Kozorak's blade out of position. Then, with a burst of speed, he lunged forward, his plasma blade plunging deep into the Binar's chest, piercing his heart. Kozorak's eyes widened in shock and pain. His plasma blade fell from nerveless fingers, clattering to the floor. He swayed for a moment, then toppled backward, his massive body crashing to the ground with a final, echoing thud. Ricky stood over his fallen foe, his chest heaving with exertion, his face streaked with sweat and grime. He stared down at Kozorak's lifeless body, feeling a mix of triumph and exhaustion washing over him. A sound behind him made him spin, his plasma blade coming up in a guard position, but it was just Marcus and Liam, picking their way through the debris-strewn passageway. They looked as battered and exhausted as Ricky felt, their armor scorched and dented, but they were alive. Ricky lowered his blade, a tired grin spreading across his face. Glad to see you two in one piece. The AI? Destroyed, Marcus confirmed, his voice rough with fatigue. Along with most of the vault. It's over, Ricky. We won. Ricky nodded, the weight of their victory settling over him like a mantle. They had done it. Against all odds, they had stopped Talon's plans and ended the threat of the apex predators. But the cost had been high, and the scars of this battle would linger long after the smoke had cleared. Together, the three humans began the long trek back through the now silent facility, stepping over the fallen bodies of the apex predators. The evacuation ships waited for them outside, ready to take them back to friendly space. But as they walked, Ricky couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There would be other threats, other battles to fight, and they would be there to meet them, ready to stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. As the evacuation ships lifted off from the ravaged Binar homeworld, Ricky, Marcus, and Liam found themselves surrounded by a contingent of Galactic Council peacekeepers. The human team, battered and exhausted from their harrowing mission, tensed as the peacekeepers approached, unsure of their intentions. Leading the contingent was Zorath, a tall, slender Krellian with piercing violet eyes and an air of authority that commanded respect. He strode forward, his long, elegant robes swishing around his ankles, and extended a hand to Ricky. "Commander Young," Zorath said, his voice a soft, melodic tenor. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our deepest gratitude for your team's heroic actions. You have done the galaxy a great service by stopping Talon Crag and Dr. Zeklor." Ricky shook Zorath's hand, his grip firm and strong. "We were just doing our duty, Ambassador. But I have a feeling this isn't just a social call." Zorath nodded, his expression growing somber. "You are correct, Commander. The Council has uncovered evidence that suggests the rogue Binar's experiments were not acting alone. We believe they were part of a larger conspiracy, one that involves members of the Council itself." Ricky exchanged a glance with Marcus and Liam, their faces mirroring his own shock and concern. "A conspiracy within the Council? How deep does this go?" "That is what we need your help to find out," Zorath said. "Your team's unique skills and experience make you the ideal candidates to investigate this matter. I urge you to return with me to the Council's headquarters on Novus Prime, where you can present your findings and help root out the corruption that threatens the stability of our galactic alliance." Ricky considered Zorath's words, his mind racing with the implications. He knew that their mission was far from over, that the fight against the forces that sought to destabilize the galaxy was only just beginning. With a nod, he turned to his team. "Oh, what do you say, boys? Ready for another adventure?" Marcus and Liam grinned, their eyes sparkling with renewed determination. "Always," Marcus said, slapping Ricky on the back. "Let's go save the galaxy, one corrupt politician at a time." As the human team boarded Zorath's sleek, silver-hulled diplomatic vessel, they knew that they were embarking on a new chapter in their journey. No longer were they just soldiers, fighting on the front lines of a war against tyranny and oppression. Now, they were diplomats and investigators, tasked with unraveling a web of deceit and corruption that threatened the very foundation of galactic peace. As the ship lifted off, Ricky stared out the viewport at the stars streaking past, his mind whirling with the possibilities of what lay ahead. Zorath approached, a data pad in his hand. "I have compiled all the evidence we have gathered so far," he said, handing the pad to Ricky. "I believe it will be of great interest to you and your team." Ricky took the pad, his eyes scanning the information displayed on the screen. As he read, his brow furrowed, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. The evidence painted a disturbing picture of a shadowy cabal, a group of individuals who had been manipulating events behind the scenes, using the Binars and other species as mere pawns in their game of galactic domination. "This goes deeper than we ever imagined," Ricky murmured, his voice low and tense. "The Binars were just the tip of the iceberg. This conspiracy stretches across the galaxy, involving some of the most powerful and influential figures in the Council." Marcus and Liam, looking over Ricky's shoulder, nodded grimly. They realized that their actions on the Binar homeworld, as crucial as they had been, were only the beginning of a much larger fight. A fight that would test their skills, their resolve, and their loyalty to the cause of justice and freedom. As the ship hurtled through the void, carrying them towards the heart of the galactic government, Ricky and his team steeled themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that the road would be long and treacherous, that they would face enemies both known and unknown. But they also knew that they had each other, a bond forged in the heat of battle and tempered by the weight of their shared experiences. Together, they would stand against the darkness, a beacon of hope in a galaxy teetering on the brink of chaos. For they were more than just soldiers or diplomats. They were the guardians of peace, the defenders of the innocent, and the champions of justice. And they would not rest until the conspiracy was exposed, and the galaxy was safe once more. As Zorath's sleek diplomatic vessel descended through the atmosphere of Novus Prime, Ricky and his team gazed out the viewport at the sprawling cityscape below. Towering skyscrapers of gleaming metal and crystal stretched as far as the eye could see, connected by a web of skyways and hovering traffic. The galactic capital was a marvel of advanced technology and architectural grandeur, a testament to the power and influence of the Galactic Council. But as they disembarked from the ship and entered the bustling spaceport, Ricky couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The air was thick with tension, and the faces of the various alien species they passed were etched with a mixture of fear and suspicion. Their unease only grew as they were met by a delegation of Galactic Council representatives, each one more inscrutable than the last. There was the insectoid Kiltar, its compound eyes glittering with 1,000 facets, and the reptilian Saurian, its scales shimmering in iridescent patterns. Each representative greeted the humans with a mix of curiosity and calculation, their words honeyed, but their intentions opaque. Ricky, drawing upon his years of diplomatic training, navigated the web of pleasantries and veiled insinuations with a deft touch. He smiled and nodded, his words carefully chosen to reveal nothing while gleaning everything. It was a delicate dance, one that required both charm and cunning in equal measure. As the days passed and the meetings grew longer, Ricky and his team began to piece together a disturbing picture. The Galactic Council, once a bastion of unity and cooperation, had become a nest of vipers, each faction vying for power and influence at the expense of the greater good. They met with the Kiltar representative in a dimly lit bar, the air heavy with the scent of exotic spices and the chatter of a dozen alien tongues. The insectoid leaned in close, its mandibles twitching as it spoke of secret alliances and backroom deals. "The council is rotten to the core," it hissed, its voice a rasping whisper. "There are those who would see the galaxy burn if only to rule over the ashes." The Saurian, in turn, spoke of a shadow war being fought in the halls of power, of assassinations and sabotage carried out with ruthless precision. "Trust no one," it warned, its reptilian eyes glinting with a feral light. "The enemy is everywhere and nowhere." Ricky absorbed it all, his mind racing as he tried to fit the pieces together. The evidence pointed to a conspiracy of staggering proportions, one that threatened the very fabric of galactic society. And at its heart, he suspected, was the enigmatic figure known only as the Overseer. As they delved deeper, following the trail of corruption and deceit, Ricky and his team found themselves in increasingly dangerous territory. They were shadowed by mysterious figures, their movements tracked by unseen eyes. More than once, they narrowly escaped assassination attempts, their quick reflexes and advanced technology the only things keeping them alive. But with each close call and narrow escape, their resolve only grew stronger. They knew that they were the galaxy's last hope, the only ones who could unravel the Shadow Hand's web of lies and bring the conspirators to justice. And so they pressed on, gathering allies and information wherever they could find them. They met with rebel leaders and rogue agents, with smugglers and spies. Each one had a piece of the puzzle, a fragment of the truth that, when assembled, painted a chilling picture of the Overseer's grand design. The Shadow Hand, they learned, had been manipulating events for decades, orchestrating wars and toppling governments with ruthless efficiency. They had infiltrated every level of galactic society, from the highest echelons of power to the lowest criminal underbellies. And at the center of it all was the Overseer, a figure of such cunning and ruthlessness that even their most loyal agents feared to speak their name. Ricky knew that confronting the Overseer directly was their only chance. The Shadow Hand's influence was too vast, its reach too long to be dismantled piece by piece. They had to strike at the heart of the conspiracy, to cut off the head of the snake and watch the body wither and die. And so, with a heavy heart and a grim determination, Ricky began to lay his plans. He would infiltrate the Overseer's stronghold, a heavily guarded space station hidden in the depths of a remote nebula. He would confront the mastermind behind the Shadow Hand and bring them to justice no matter the cost. No. It was a mission that would test him to his very limits, a challenge that would push his skills and his resolve to the breaking point. But Ricky knew that he could not fail. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and he would not rest until the Shadow Hand was brought to its knees. As he gathered his team and his allies, Ricky felt a sense of purpose settling over him like a mantle. They were the galaxy's last line of defense, the only thing standing between the forces of darkness and the light of hope. And they would not falter, no matter the odds. The final battle was about to begin, and Ricky knew that it would be the fight of his life. But he was ready, his heart steeled and his mind sharp. He would face the Overseer, and he would emerge victorious for the sake of all those who counted on him. And so, with a final nod to his team, Ricky set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Shadow Hand's reign of terror was about to come to an end, and Ricky would be the one to bring it crashing down. Ricky and his team, along with their newfound allies, boarded the stolen diplomatic ship, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Zixel, the Saurian hacker, had forged their credentials with expert precision, ensuring that their cover would hold up under even the most intense scrutiny. As they approached the Shadow Hand's space station, Ricky took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle to come. He knew that everything they had fought for, every sacrifice they had made, had led them to this moment. The ship docked without incident, the station's automated systems recognizing their forged credentials and granting them access. As they disembarked, Ricky gathered his team around him, his voice low and urgent. "All right, listen up," he said, his eyes hard with resolve. "We split into two groups. Marcus, Zixel, you're with me. We're heading straight for the command center to confront the Overseer. Liam, Nikolai, Kaztok, you're on sabotage duty. Take out the station's defenses and make sure no reinforcements can get through." The team nodded, their faces grim with determination. They knew the stakes, knew that failure was not an option. As Ricky's group made their way through the station's twisting corridors, they were suddenly confronted by a squad of the Shadow Hand's elite guards. The guards were massive, their bodies augmented with cutting-edge cybernetics and genetic enhancements. Marcus sprung into action, his plasma blades flashing as he engaged the guards in close combat. He was a whirlwind of death, his movements precise and deadly as he carved through the enemy ranks. Zixel, meanwhile, worked to hack into the guard's armor and weapon systems, his fingers flying over his portable console. With a final triumphant keystroke, he succeeded, and the guard's own technology turned against them, their weapons sparking and misfiring, their armor locking up and rendering them immobile. Ricky, seizing the opportunity, pushed forward, his sights set on the command center and the confrontation that awaited him there. As they breached the command center's doors, Ricky found himself face-to-face with the Overseer, a towering figure that radiated an aura of ancient power. The Overseer's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and when he spoke, his voice seemed to echo from the depths of time itself. "You have come far, Richard Young," the Overseer said, his tone almost amused. "But you do not understand the true nature of what you fight against." He gestured to the screens that lined the command center's walls, each one displaying a different scene of galactic turmoil. Worlds burned, armies clashed, and civilizations crumbled, all under the watchful eye of the Shadow Hand. "The Shadow Hand exists to prevent this chaos, this destruction," the Overseer continued. "We maintain order, even if it means sacrificing the individual freedoms of a few. Surely you can see the necessity of our actions." Ricky shook his head, his jaw set with determination. "You're wrong," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "Freedom isn't something to be sacrificed. It's something to be protected. And I won't let you take that away from the galaxy, no matter the cost." The Overseer sighed, a sound like the whisper of ancient wind. "Very well," he said, his eyes hardening. "If you will not see reason, then you leave me no choice." With a gesture, the Overseer unleashed a storm of psychic energy, the air crackling with the force of his power. Ricky felt the pressure building in his mind, a searing pain that threatened to overwhelm him. But he pushed back, drawing on every ounce of his own strength and determination. He thought of his team, of the battles they had fought and the bonds they had forged. He thought of the countless lives that depended on him, the galaxy that looked to him as its last hope. With a roar of defiance, Ricky charged forward, his plasma blade flashing as he met the Overseer's attack head-on. The battle that followed was unlike anything Ricky had ever experienced, a clash of wills and powers that shook the very foundations of the station. The Overseer fought with the skill and strength of an ancient warrior, his psychic blasts and energy fields battering at Ricky's defenses. But Ricky was relentless, his determination unbreakable as he pressed his attack. They traded blows across the command center, their battle raging through the heart of the Shadow Hand's power. Consoles sparked and shattered, the station's systems overloading under the strain of their conflict. And through it all, Ricky never wavered, never faltered. He fought with a fire that burned brighter than any star, a courage that would not be denied. In a final, desperate struggle, Ricky traded blows with the Overseer, their clash a battle of wills as much as strength. The ancient being's psychic attacks hammered at Ricky's mind, seeking to crush his resolve, but the human refused to yield. He drew upon the memories of all those he had fought to protect, the billions of lives across the galaxy that depended on his success. With a roar of defiance, Ricky launched himself at the Overseer, tackling the towering figure to the ground. They grappled in a brutal tangle of limbs, Ricky's plasma blade sparking against the Overseer's ancient armor. The human's eyes fell upon a glowing orb embedded in the Overseer's chest, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Instinctively, he knew that this was the source of the progenitor's power. Ricky's hand shot out, his fingers closing around the orb. The Overseer's eyes widened in sudden fear, his psychic assault faltering. With a final, wrenching effort, Ricky tore the orb free, the device coming loose in a shower of sparks and flickering light. For a moment, the two adversaries stared at each other, the orb pulsing in Ricky's grasp. Then, with a defiant roar, the human crushed the device in his fist, the ancient technology shattering into 1,000 glittering shards. The Overseer convulsed, his body going rigid as the source of his power was destroyed. His eyes dimmed, the glow fading from his ancient features as his life force ebbed away. In moments, the progenitor's body went limp, his millennia-spanning existence snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Elsewhere on the station, Liam, Nikolai, and Kaztok fought their way through the Shadowhand's defenses, the trio a whirlwind of destruction. Nikolai's heavy weapons chewed through the station's security drones, while Kaztok's agility and speed allowed him to evade the technicians' desperate counterattacks. As they reached the central power core, a vast chamber thrumming with barely contained energy, Liam unslung his sniper rifle. The weapon unfolded in his hands, its advanced targeting systems locking onto the remaining defenders. With a series of precise shots, Liam picked off the Shadowhand guards, each round finding its mark with unerring accuracy. Kaztok, seizing the opportunity, darted forward, his hands a blur of motion as he planted a series of explosive charges around the power core. The devices blinked and chirped as they armed, their timers counting down with merciless precision. At that moment, the charges detonated, the explosions ripping through the power core's containment fields. Alarms blared and emergency lights flashed as the core began to overload, its energies spiraling out of control. Ricky, Marcus, and Zixel raced through the disintegrating station, the deck buckling and twisting beneath their feet. They reached the evacuation point just as Liam, Nikolai, and Kaztok arrived, the two groups reuniting in a moment of desperate relief. They piled into the waiting ship, Ricky slamming his fist on the controls to seal the airlock. The vessel pulled away from the station, its engines flaring to life as it clawed for open space. Behind them, the Shadowhand station exploded in a blinding flash of light, the power core finally consuming itself in a cataclysmic burst of energy. The shock wave slammed into the fleeing ship, sending it tumbling end over end, its hull groaning under the strain. But the vessel held together, its crew battered but alive. They watched through the viewports as the station disintegrated into a cloud of molten debris, the Shadowhand's power broken at last. The battered ship carrying Ricky and his team limped into Earth's orbit, its hull scarred and pitted from the fierce battles they had endured. As they disembarked, they were greeted by a throng of reporters and well-wishers, their faces alight with awe and gratitude. In the days that followed, the team was swept up in a whirlwind of celebrations and ceremonies. The Galactic Council lauded them as heroes, the saviors of the galaxy. Medals were pinned to their chests, their names etched into the annals of history. But amidst the accolades and the adulation, Ricky felt a growing sense of unease. The Council, in their infinite wisdom, offered the team positions of power and influence, a chance to shape the future of the galaxy. Ricky's team were eager to accept, their eyes bright with the promise of a new challenge. But Ricky, ever the soldier, balked at the idea of trading his rifle for a desk. "I'm a warrior, not a politician," he said, his voice gruff. "My place is on the battlefield, not in some gilded office." And so, with a heavy heart, Ricky bid farewell to his team and returned to Earth, to the life he had left behind. But the world he returned to was not the one he remembered. The revelation of humanity's strength and resilience had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, awakening old fears and prejudices. The other species, once content to dismiss humans as upstarts and newcomers, now saw them as a potential threat. Whispers of containment and control spread like wildfire, and the Galactic Council, ever mindful of stability, began to impose strict regulations on human activity. Travel beyond the solar system was restricted, trade agreements were rescinded, and human ambassadors were recalled from their posts. The message was clear: humanity was to be confined to its own small corner of the galaxy, lest its growing power upset the delicate balance of power. Ricky, who had fought so hard for the freedom and autonomy of all species, was appalled by these developments. He saw in them the same fear and mistrust that had led to the rise of the Shadowhand, the same narrow-minded thinking that had nearly brought the galaxy to its knees. He knew he could not stand idly by while his people were relegated to second-class citizens, and so, with a fire burning in his heart, Ricky took up a new fight. He became a vocal advocate for human rights, using his newfound fame to rally support and challenge the Council's decisions. He spoke out against the restrictions and the regulations, arguing that humanity had earned its place among the stars. His words found receptive ears among his fellow humans, who flocked to his banner in droves. But to the other species, Ricky's actions only served to confirm their worst fears. They saw in him a dangerous radical, a firebrand who threatened to upset the very foundations of galactic society. And as tensions rose and old prejudices resurfaced, the divide between humans and the rest of the galaxy grew ever wider. Ricky, for all his passion and conviction, began to realize that he was fighting an uphill battle. The fear and mistrust that had taken root in the galaxy could not be easily uprooted, and his actions, no matter how well-intentioned, only seemed to be making things worse. He knew that the true threat to peace was not any one species or faction, but the very divisions that he himself was inadvertently widening. And so, with a heavy heart, Ricky sought out a new path. He reached out to his old allies on the Galactic Council, pleading for understanding and compromise. It was a delicate dance, a tightrope walk between the demands of his own people and the fears of the galaxy at large. But Ricky, ever the diplomat, navigated the treacherous waters with skill and finesse. He negotiated tirelessly, trading concessions and compromises, until at last a fragile agreement was reached. A treaty that would grant humans greater autonomy and representation within the Galactic Council, while still maintaining the stability and security that the other species so desperately craved. It was a bittersweet victory, a hard-fought compromise that left no one entirely satisfied. But it was a start, a foundation upon which a new era of cooperation and understanding could be built. The signing ceremony was a grand affair, a gathering of dignitaries and representatives from across the galaxy. Ricky, as the architect of the treaty, was to be the first to sign. He stepped up to the podium, his heart swelling with pride and hope. But as he reached for the pen, a sudden commotion rippled through the crowd. A figure, cloaked and hooded, pushed through the throng, a weapon clutched in a shaking hand. Ricky, his instincts honed by a lifetime of battle, saw the danger a split second before anyone else. He moved to react, to shield the dignitaries from the threat, but he was a fraction of a second too slow. The figure raised the weapon, a cry of rage and desperation on their lips. "You will be the downfall of us all!" they screamed, their voice cracking with emotion. And then, before anyone could react, they pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, echoing through the chamber like a thunderclap. Ricky felt a searing pain in his chest, a sudden shocking cold that spread through his body like ice water. He stumbled, his hand reaching for the wound, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Around him, the chamber erupted into chaos, screams and shouts mingling with the sudden blare of alarms. His team was at his side in an instant, their faces etched with grief and horror. They cradled him in their arms, their tears mingling with his blood. But even as the life drained from his body, Ricky's mind was racing. He saw now, with a clarity that had eluded him in life, the true nature of the struggle he had been fighting. It was not a battle of species against species, or faction against faction. It was a battle against fear itself, against the very darkness that lurked in the hearts of all beings. And in that moment, Ricky knew that his sacrifice would not be in vain. He had lit a spark, a flame that would continue to burn long after he was gone. For he had shown the galaxy that even in the face of great adversity, one person could make a difference. That the fight for justice and equality was always worth the cost. And as he breathed his last, a small smile on his lips, Ricky knew that his legacy would live on. That the dream of a united galaxy, a galaxy where all species could live and thrive together, would never die. It was a dream worth fighting for, a dream worth dying for, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The news of Ricky's death sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Galactic Council, stunned by the sudden turn of events, immediately launched an investigation into the assassination. The assassin, a member of a fringe group that believed humanity's ascendance would lead to the downfall of the galaxy, was quickly apprehended and brought to justice. But the damage had been done. The fragile peace that Ricky had worked so hard to achieve was shattered, the tensions between humans and the other species reignited by the senseless act of violence. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens alike mourned the loss of a true hero. Memorials were held, statues erected in his honor. But even as they celebrated his life and mourned his passing, they knew that the fight he had begun was far from over. For the Shadow Hand, though defeated, had left its mark on the galaxy. The fear and mistrust it had sown could not be easily forgotten, and the scars it had left could not be easily healed. But Ricky's sacrifice had shown the galaxy that there was another way, that unity and understanding were possible if only they had the courage to reach for them. And so, even as the galaxy mourned, it also began to heal. Slowly, tentatively, the different species began to come together to bridge the gaps that had divided them for so long. It was a long and difficult road, fraught with setbacks and challenges, but with each passing day, the dream that Ricky had fought and died for grew a little closer to reality.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.